honored right now to introduce to you Dr. Jerry Hanley, who's the Executive Director of MERLOT and Assistant Vice Chancellor, Academic Technology Services for the California State University Office of the Chancellor. At MERLOT, he directs the development, delivery, and sustainability of MERLOT's organization and services to enhance teaching and learning with academic technologies. At the CSU, Jerry oversees the development and implementation of integrated digital library services and resources academic technology services, and the Accessible Technology Initiative supporting the CSU's 23 campuses. Previously held positions in the CSU includes Professor of Psychology, Director of Faculty Development, and Director of Strategic Planning. He received his bachelor, master's, and PhD from SUNY at Stony Brook in psychology. Please help me welcome Dr. Hanley.
Well, good morning, everyone. How you doing? Presentations were great, weren't they so far? I mean, a lot of presentations. And I'm going to say, everything that Cable said is on the money, all right? So any way you capture this, follow that thing, it's just a great vision of what we need to do. And what I'm going to start today is talk about, a little bit getting started about doing things differently. How many people have ever done something crazy in their life? Okay, we've all done something now. Why did you do it? Did a friend get you to do this thing? Right? Think about what is it that gets you to do something different. And it isn't like a friend who says, hey, David, why don't you try this? Or Daniel, come on, why don't we give this a whirl? How many people feel that your friends have led you to the road of ruining crazy things in your life, right? Okay. And I think that issue is really what is essential if we're going to begin to change the way content is made available to our faculty and our students. Is going to be building the network of friends who say, come on, why don't you give this a whirl? Okay, now how does that occur? When we begin to think about, and I'll say in California, when we have over 100,000 faculty members across our community colleges, the Cal State system, and the UC. When we have 3.2 million students, how do you make that happen? To get your friends to say, let's change the world. Right? How do we improve society as a large collective? And this is where legislation and legislators can play an important role. And I think Amy talked about the legislation in Oregon. And I think beginning to look at some of these big pictures, how can you set up some of the conditions that can enable the priority for the affordability of learning for all be a priority at your institution? So today what I'm going to do is start off and talk a little bit about kind of the California story, a little bit about who we are as an institution, a little bit about legislation. And you might say, you know, you have librarians, what the heck do I have to deal with legislation? It's all the stuff I have to deal with, not that I have an influence on, right? Or faculty. But I think your perspective, your information can change the way the legislation can occur. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. What are strategies that can translate into institutional actions? And then there was some question about how do I find all this OER stuff? I'm going to try to show you some of those things that are available that you can walk away with today. So in California, we have 114 California community colleges, and they're in 76 districts with their own board of trustees. The Cal State system, we have 23 campuses, 500,000 students altogether, and 10 community colleges. We have a lot of people, right? And we all work in peace and harmony, right? Just like that. And this makes it really challenging about how do you scale the impact for affordable learning solutions, for OER. And so when we begin to look at us in the Cal State system, we're one of the most diverse institutions. Our state government only funds about 60%. 80% of our students are on financial aid. 10% of our students experience home or housing insecurity every year. 25% of our students are experiencing food insecurity every year. What do you think the average annual income of our independent students are who comes to the CSU? Anybody want to yell? Yes?
20,000.
A little over 12,000 a year. Okay. And then just think about it. If you're going to tack on a $200 course materials, how are they going to pay for that, right? What do you think the family of four of our students? 24,000. So when we talk about affordability, it's not about the price of the book. It's about the affordability of materials for our students, right? It's just not about price. It's how do you make it easy and convenient for them to have access to the material? How do you integrate it into an effective pedagogical strategy? A lot of things that people have talked about. And anybody have graduation initiatives going on in your institution? The California State University, we have a 19.7% four-year graduation rate, and we had a 57% six-year graduation rate. So to get money from our governor, we had to set targets by 2025, a 40% four-year graduation rate, and a 70% six-year graduation rate. Now, how are you going to do that unless you change? Right? And this is going to be how you do it with your friends, because doing it independently is not going to work. So we have textbook affordability as one of our aspects, and we love the Florida Virtual University survey. I mean, I use that all the time. And this is something, Cable used this data before too as well. If our average unit load per student is 13.2, and they got to get up to 15, and half of our students are taking fewer units per semester because of the cost of textbooks, how can you influence your students to take more units per degree, right? 26% drop the course. If you're trying to get your students not to have a repeat delete, not to get withdrawals, stay in class, the cost of textbooks makes a difference. And last week, the Mark Gerard from the SUNY system was showing us some data where you're getting about a 12-13% increase in retention in the courses that were adopting free and open education resources in those classes. A 10% increase in retention. Have you ever tried to get a 10% increase in retention? Huge, right? People should be doing a happy dance when you begin to look at how the issues around affordability for our students can impact their success. And 20% fail, right? Now, this data, I just think, this is the type of information that when you're trying to reach 100,000 faculty members, you have to be persistent. You have to be straightforward, and your marketing around why this makes a difference is essential. And your research, the research that's coming from Hilton and out of Lumen Learning and a whole variety of areas, is critical to communicate out to your faculty why is this so important. I was talking to Daniel earlier. When faculty know that there's something that they can do about their students' success, they're going to be motivated. And give them that ammunition to say, you can make a difference. So how And I just said in California, if I can just save $170, right, the cost of a pretty expensive one book per semester. I got over 3 million students in California, $1 billion a year in cost savings. Make the calculation in Florida. Now, when a student saves $170, are they saying, oh, I'm going to run this, put it in the bank? No, this is a $1 billion financial aid package for our students that we could never get out of the legislators. Because we are keeping money in the student's pocket that lets their 80% of our students who have financial aid, they can spend more of it on living, on paying for rent, paying for food, paying for gas when they can go home, paying, and we've got lots of interviews with students from all sides, getting this message out about how affordability can impact the student is very important. And so what we did in the CSU is we have our initiative called Affordable Learning Solutions. Now, one of the things, my job at the CSU, I run our libraries. I deal with our learning management systems. I manage all those contracts. I manage a lot of the relationship with our bookstores. I do course redesign. I got to do a lot of stuff. And guess what? With all these faculty members across lots of systems, you have to often say, what do I have to do first to get to the goals, the vision that Hewlett has laid out? And I'm going to say the first goal is to move to digital. If you don't move to digital, you can't get all the benefits that cable and you laid out. And if you look at this poster here, bad poster. Why? Books. Print books. Okay? If you don't move to digital, you can't get the benefits. And so when having to deal with lots of different stakeholder groups, we didn't call it the OER initiative because there was a lot of issues about moving forward, understanding what is OER, understanding the licensing. You know, we got a whole variety of politics going on. So we kind of named it Affordable Learning Solutions. And moving the price point, and by moving to digital, you can make things more affordable. And then what happens is faculty start asking the questions of what's next? I got digital. Well, how can I make the digital better? And all the elements that Cable laid out and Amy talked about as well, of the constraints of copyrighted, all rights reserved materials, then they go, oh, now I'm ready to understand those issues. But if you don't get it to digital, they're never going to ask those questions. So what I'm going to do here is talk a little bit about history. You know, they always say history, if you don't pay attention to it, you'll repeat it. You're doomed to repeat it. Well, my feeling is you want to learn lessons from the past so you can repeat the good stuff and avoid the bad stuff, right? And a lot of these things work here, both within your institution and within your state. People always want to be innovative, but they also want to be successful. They're often risk averse. So laying out a foundation of legislation, legislative analyst reports, policies that are put in place, and aggregating those up so they think it's not such a big deal to take the next step. Like the legislation that Amy talked about, putting designation on your courses for zero cost materials, right? Faculty would go, oh my goodness, and we got a lot, in the CSU. And I said, hey folks, do you understand that there's something called the Higher Education Authorization Act that actually required this type of information available to students about 10 years ago, right? And then they go, oh, so it's not such a big thing, right? So that's why I tell you, sometimes looking at your legislative history and policies over time and creating this little packet allows change management to move forward. So here's one, and Cable's, one of his early slides was around education is about sharing. And in 1996, we got some money through some legislation to say we need to share our instruction materials. And how the heck are we going to do it? There was a multimedia repository that became MERLOT, right? And in 2004, we said, okay, just not the free stuff. And back then, Creative Commons license was just emerging. We said we have to start looking into how do we begin to bring the publishers into this process and the libraries into this process and look at a digital marketplace. And in 2007, the U.S. Department of Education came out with a report about textbook affordability. Turn the page. Anybody remember that? Okay. And that's another piece of, again, this is 11 years ago, talking about sharing the models in the marketplace of things about how we need to do this. Then came the Higher Education Opportunity Act. Federal law, and understanding that your student financial aid is dependent upon complying with the Higher Education Opportunity Act, which requires you to put title, author, ISBN, and price connected with the course that students are able to find that material when they're interested. So the question about Follett, Barnes & Noble, how they can work with this, guess what? They had to do something like this in 10 years ago. Right? That's when it started and actually came into effect. Just so what I do every year, I send out a memo to all our presidents, our provosts, to say, if you don't comply with the Higher Education Opportunity Act, the textbook provision, you can lose your financial aid. And the cost that it might, and then look at all the other benefits too. And this is how you begin to, like a Trojan horse, you bring these other messages about open education resources, about the legislation that they want to support, about using affordable learning solutions. So finding ways to blend the communication into something that will get your executives' attention, because they don't want to mess with student financial aid. In 2010, the California State University launched the Affordable Learning Solutions, right? Because that's when the HEOA actually went into effect. So we said, okay, now we're going to have a program to take care of this stuff for you, right? 2011, and Cable talked about this, the U.S. Department of Labor kicked off the Trade Adjustment Assistance for Community Colleges and Career Training. Anybody, your campuses have TAC grants? Anybody TAC? $2 billion to 700 community colleges across the U.S. And there was a requirement to put a Creative Commons CC BY license on any materials produced by that grant funding. Okay. Those resources, I'll show you those a little bit, are out there, and you're beginning to see, and when you begin to point to other institutions where you can say, look at what my friends are doing out in the world. Look at other institutions. It's not that scary. Let's move forward. Do something with our friends. Then in California, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. Is this helpful, folks? As you're, or would you rather have coffee and dessert? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about, in these critical areas, what we found was really important to get your friends on board with an affordability and in there, really how you push the OER. So the first step was we got a legislator to say, you know what, we need to build capacity. People can't find it. So they said, here's 2 bills, Senate bills, and we're going to build, in a sense, a library of materials, and they put a $5 million allocation on it. But they said, You only get it if you get external funding. And they put up some other stuff on it. So finally, in 2014, I got some money. And then we also had to work with the 3 academic senates for the CSU system. Academic senates, I want to say, do we have academic senators here? Okay. Anybody deal with academic senates? Yeah. This becomes a critical aspect of, if you have your academic senate as your friend, you can do a whole lot more in an institution than without them if they're going against you. So, how do you get them to play along? We did that in 2015. Once we created a library of all these materials, then you have to have, how do you help faculty learn how to adopt it? Amy was talking about course redesign. So how do you put some money in there? Now here, working with legislators, sometimes they have their own ideas of what's the right thing to do. And so we just had to reduce the cost by at least 30%. But we got in there that you had to do it by adopting at least one OER in the course section, right? They didn't want to go all the way, so I said, okay, how do you have at least one digital and OER? Okay. Then we had another bill, 2000, the 1359, was to identify the course sections at zero cost. Now, one of the issues that you have to think about is, what's the order in which you start changing the culture on a campus? Is jumping to zero cost on course for students. In our strategy, we said, let's do that after we actually had the capability for faculty to find and use the lower cost materials. Because then we're going to get a lot of pushback. And then, as Kate mentioned, California community colleges, they have certain proposition funding, and they got $5 million for zero textbook cost degrees. And I think some of this is, how do you tell a story of taking steps that organizationally develop the capability to achieve the outcomes that we're about this morning? Because if you look at it, it goes back from just in our own legislation from 2012 to 6 years of taking steps. And so what I'm telling you here, persist, 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 communicate. Now, if you remember anything, I'd say this would be, I think, a useful model. Because this is what drives our Affordable Learning Solutions initiative within California. At the bottom, leveraging content providers. OER is essential. And we have library resources. I purchase about $20 million a year in our library procurement process. Free materials, right? And it's not all the benefits of OER, but moving to digital content, library content, and how do you then begin to get libraries to start making instructional content part of their acquisition strategy. You ever find it interesting that our libraries purchase material just in case you might want to need it? And we don't buy anything for our students when we require them to use it for their courses. Right? And librarians, and I love you all. I work with them a lot, all in the CSU, and beginning to think how our library collections, our acquisition strategy, where our usage can go when you have students. You get your multi-seat licenses to enable greater access to all these materials. How do you get faculty to move, especially in the upper division seminars, to your primary sources that we have in our libraries? The other thing we've done is, when we have our e-book collections, we have our bookstores put a tag on the shelf in the bookstore saying, oh, by the way, this book is also available free as an e-book within our library collection. Because what we did is, a little thing is, we took our library ebook collection and then we ran it against our book order collection at one of our campuses. We had over 200 sections where the faculty were ordering books that we already had in the library. So I think Amy's point around the collaboration between bookstores and libraries are essential. And what's the difference between the library and the bookstore? The card you swipe when you leave. Right? There's inventory, you're managing it, or something along those lines. And so looking at the content providers, finding ways to work with them, to move to digital, to get connected with the libraries, and how do you support OER, and they get the print books to those students who are looking for those. And if you look at the OpenStax print books, they are really cool. And that's often how I convince faculty to go OpenStax, is I bring the physical book in and say, tell me what's wrong with this physics book. Well, this is pretty good. Okay. All right, so content providers. The next one, creating capabilities. If you don't make it convenient for your faculty and your students, nothing's happening. All right? So this is just implementation strategy. So think about how you're going to make it convenient for people to find. The next part is, so the two bottom layers are about the producing side of the equation, the content and kind of the delivery. The yellow part is developing demand. What you want is your faculty and your students to say, I want it. Right? So what does it take? If you don't have good communication, if you don't try to provide training, professional development, give them an experience of understanding the value of the OER. This is what they're just going to talk about, the open textbook network. The experience that your faculty can get with these textbooks and then understand the value. Because if they just hear OER, they're going to say, what the heck is that? What's the chat? So how you engage them in using those resources become essential. Now, do your libraries have reference librarians? What is your job? People are looking for something they don't know, they don't understand, and you engage them in that discovery process to help them say, oh man, this is great. Right? So you can begin to think about a lot of strategies of existing capabilities you have on your campus to help develop demand. Teaching learning centers, anybody got those on your campus? Right? Yeah. So that really has become an essential element for faculty. And I just, who's Brian, I think his name was, he's an instructional designer, right? Sorry, I probably screwed up your name. But instructional designers are another place where professional development for faculty come into place. So you work with instructional designers, they can then help provide that professional development. And the top is enabling the ecosystem. If you don't have your leaders on your campus, in your system, in your legislators, and your legislators understanding the value as this being a priority, you're going to be pushing a rock uphill for a long time. So this is why often the legislation or the policies on your campuses can become enabling for you to say, how do we spend money on developing the demand, the training, professional development? How do we create capabilities to make it easily accessible? And how can I bring people together, content providers, to provide more affordable learning? Is that useful? Four things, and as a cognitive psychologist, you can remember 4 things, right? All right, so this is enabling higher education with legislation, the ecosystem, creating the capabilities to find the low cost, developing the demand for faculty. So these legislative aspects are being used to help drive our model. So now I'm just going to go through some aspects. So if you want to do some of the things that we did, here are some, I think, useful things. Now, we had to establish a California OER Council. What's the acronym? Pronounce it. coerce. Right? This is in the legislation, right? And the council are 9 faculty from the California community colleges, the CSU, and the UC, right? So what I would recommend, don't call it coerce, right? Now, one of the things, we have 100,000 faculty member, can 9 faculty ever represent all the issues? Well, what really became important, and these were all political appointees who had often very little knowledge about OER. But what became essential is, as an administrator, I stayed completely out of it, and I just supported the heck out about them needing to develop the friendships across our 3 systems, because there is not, it's not a kumbaya in the state of California when it comes to our 3 systems. So how do you get these people to overcome some of their additional positions? And if you eat, you feed them, you make it easy for them, you recognize what they're doing, then they can become an essential voice. And since they were appointed by the academic senates of the 3 system, it then built a friendship relationship with me as the horrible empire's administrator with, the good part of the rebellion, the faculty, right? You got to start breaking down these things. So, and communicating with the oversight of the academic senate, and their job was to find 50 courses, high enrollment courses, that would target open education resources and finding digital open textbooks. Leveraging our articulation agreements to then say one course then can serve 100,000 students because of all 114 community colleges, the CSU and the UC. Beginning to look at the strategic selection of where you're going to find the courses and where are the open textbooks. And guess what? OpenStax has targeted a lot of those courses. So you have an opportunity to find the resources that are aligned with the courses. And then you can say, here are the courses, and we have something called a common ID system that lays out, here are the course objectives, here are the learning outcomes, and then you can begin to tie the resources with the courses, that curriculum, to help the faculty make a choice. You don't make it convenient, you don't make it easy, it's not going to happen. And then they also have to create a review process. Right? MERLOT has been doing reviews of education material for 18 years, and guess what? I didn't say use MERLOT's, I said, why don't you think about your own, make it your own, and then also here are models out there that you could look at. And guess what? What they come up with is a lot like the models that are out there, right? But they began to own it, and then they would help out, do the outreach to their colleagues to help say, why don't you review, and here's the rubric. And when I had to put out a memo to say, we'll pay you, and this council of faculty members across the 3 systems came up with this rubric, not a horrible administrator in the chancellor's office. You had a chance to say, those are my friends, I'll follow them. So they had to promote, solicit input, get them engaged. Now this, in part of the legislation, it said to create a competitive request for authoring materials. And since I only got $1 million, I said, nix on this. And a variety of reasons. One, it takes too long, and I had to deliver outcomes quickly. Right? So that's something to think about. And Amy had laid it out too as well, is the authoring part versus the reuse part. I emphasize reuse. Look what's out there, get them to know what's out there before they start to do things. And then look at
providing classic long So most of it was spent on building existing collections to launch with those 50 courses. And then they said, this is where, this is one other hint here. Legislators' names are on it, but it's their legislative staff who do all the work. And make friends with the legislative staff. Spend your time, spend lots of hours with the people behind the scenes, showing them, giving them hands-on experience. How do you find this stuff? We have something called the ISBN finder. You type in the ISBN number of your textbook, and we can help you find all the free and open education resources associated with that textbook. And he goes, that's cool, right? And so guess what? You have the Higher Education Opportunity Act that has to identify that ISBN for the students. The students could then stick this in. And they said, oh, there's a way forward for people to find this stuff. Right? And that's how you can begin to motivate people to say, this can have an impact. Because that's what your legislators want. They want the voters in their district to say, you did something to help our kids. So is this helpful, folks, getting through this stuff a little bit? Okay. If not, you can just give me one of these. Right? So we had to then showcase the 50 courses. We had to showcase the quality reviews, and the other thing, accessibility. Okay, ensuring that all students, including those with disabilities, have access to those materials. We actually developed a process to evaluate the accessibility of all the resources in there. We did that. Those are posted on the website. So it's not, again, another excuse, oh, I can't use it because I don't know if it's accessible. Right. All these have a CC BY license on it. They're there for you to use. You can download the materials. And we actually also published the methodology for doing this, using assistive technologies or non-assistive technologies to evaluate the accessibility. Okay. So this was the legislation. We got some funding, and we had to deliver some of these things. So what happened? We established it. We got some proof points in the first year. We had, we call it the California OER Council. We avoided COERC. And we produced 52 courses, 1 to 7 textbooks per course, research interest by the faculty members, and all these are available for you, right? Freely available, cool for ed. And now, if you can turn this into the Florida Open Online Library, but you may not want that. It's a joke. So what did we do? We had to turn this around quick. What you're going to see, cool for ed, is just a few layers of a user interface that leverages all the below materials. We have, we use that as our kind of the library index, and then we just select that those materials that are on front, make it easy for you. And managing the collaboration on the 9 faculty, 3 academic senates, 3 administrators, 2 granting agencies, and 1 legislation was just an interesting task. And I'll just say, you got to have someone pay attention to keeping the friends happy with one another. You don't pay attention to that, it can go sideways. And develop, conduct open license accessibility. What I thought I'd do just real quick, I'm going to pop out of the PowerPoint and just to show you live. Would you like to see that live? Is that cool? All right. Okay, so first thing, here's the course showcase. All right. This is not complicated. So here are all the courses, and so you can find what the course is. It's in a MERLOT e-portfolio, so you can say here are the topics, here are the outcomes, here are the books. All right? Now, do you think you're teaching art history or financial accounting and everything else, is that different between California and Florida? A lot of, even if there's 50% overlap, you can just save a faculty member 50% of the time if they're trying to move over. Okay? So how do you make it easy for them to do that? Okay, so, and here are all the reviews. If you want to see the reviews, you just click on these things. So here's the CSU faculty member, what they think about Boundless, and I see, is Boundless here? So here's the review, and the person from San Jose didn't like it too much, all right? But here's the information. It begins to create a dialogue about what someone liked and what didn't like. And what I find, even if one faculty doesn't like it, another faculty says, this is what I really liked around this, okay? So having an honest conversation, friends tell you the truth. It's not just about saying, here's all the good stuff, don't worry about it, just do it. Having that honest peer review of that material is essential, right? And it helps improve ongoing the process. Now, what I'll show you next is, okay, Jerry, you made a library, but are faculty using this? And I think this is another aspect of marketing that becomes very important. We created these, we call it the faculty showcase. Who is actually adopting these materials in their courses? And so I just pulled up business. And so we have a little kind of, think of this as your rock star poster, online poster of all these wonderful faculty members. We have about 80 of these across all different disciplines. And so we had each of the faculty members create a teaching e-portfolio about how they adopted the book. And they could say, oh, I teach economics, and here's the book, here's the course, here's why I adopted it. It's a simple one-pager, right? And what's also here? Oh, I can download the syllabus that a boss uses. CC BY license on that. It's downloaded at the bottom here. So now I can just open up the syllabus. And you have a chance to make it easy to see how someone else who's adopted an open textbook in their course is using it. And if the boss is from the CSU Bakersfield, then guess what? There's lots of faculty teaching economics in the CSU. It's articulated with the community college faculty. Using similar syllabi, you have a chance to make their life easier. So these are some of the tools that are out there, and you can point to these things, right? So again, I don't think teaching micro and macroeconomics in Florida and California, even though so far the three speakers have all been on the left coast. We've had Washington, Oregon, California, right? No, I'm from New York originally. So trust me, some of these things don't happen. So is that helpful there? Okay. These tools to create those teaching e-portfolios, these things right here. We have a template in MERLOT. It's free for you to use. You can go there, create your own. We have scaffolding questions to guide people through. You can post them, you can revamp, put the Florida, send the clue for it, put your own logo on it. It's there, go for it. You can post these up and below. You don't have to worry about where you're sticking them. These are there for you. These are about open educational services. And that's really, I'll say, what MERLOT focuses more on. It is the services that it will help you do these things. Okay. All righty. All right. Okay. So the next one, the College Textbook Affordability Act. Once we build the library, we did all this stuff, it's, if you build it, they will come. No. You have to say,
How do I get a road to get there, right?
okay. Now, if you don't have anything to go to, you got a problem. And that's why we, in a sense, built the capacity, branded it for the CSU and community colleges. So they're going home to where their colleagues are, not go to some winery or anything along those lines. Right? I think that aspect is really important to make it a Florida working campus place. Okay. So then we said, okay, the next legislator, and one of the things about legislators, they term out in California. So once you get a friend, then the problem is you got to make friends fast before they disappear. And I'm not sure if you have term limits in Florida too. Yeah. So make them friend, and we said, oh, this was Congresswoman Vanilla. We said, here's a chance. All this is here. There's still $4 million left in that $5 million. Take that money and now put your name on the legislation to help your faculty learn to adopt it. Okay? So, and they go, oh, great. And then you spend all your time talking to the staff work person who has to really do the legislation and negotiations, stuff like that. So what we laid out was agreed on campuses get up to 50,000, determined by the number of course sections to save at least 30% in the cost. And we were pushing on the cost, but we got something rather than nothing. Now here is, I think, important aspects. Your proposal to get the money, your campus had to have an academic senate resolution supporting faculty adoption of free and open education resources. Right? And you wouldn't believe the conversations that went on. Oh my goodness, you're forcing me to adopt this. You're not. What about academic freedom? Blah, blah, blah. And you got to get through that nonsense. Okay? And having a resolution requires them to go through a process to get to some level of agreement on what OER really is. Because it takes time, it takes dialogue, and having that resolution, they go, do you want to get the money? All right, then get the resolution. And they would tweak it, and if you want to see on the Cool Fred websites, we have all the resolutions from the 44 campuses, or 45 campuses. You can see what they wrote. They're all there. Okay? So they had to have a Senate resolution, and the Academic Senate had to approve the plan for implementing their textbook affordability program. Right? So we can say it's great, but then you're going to have this administrator forcing us to do this, and they're going to tell us how we need to adopt content, right? So these aspects, I had some of my colleagues say, what are you, nuts? Right? You're just going to put this into an environment where you'll never get an answer. But it's not nuts. It's really, really good for thought and for action. Because you gotta make change through friendship. And if you engage in a shared governance process where faculty have a lot of power on how they're using content, then you have a chance to make change and to make commerce where those faculty who then adopt will then be happy to write an e-portfolio for free and say, I'm going to tell you why this is working. Because how are we going to scale to 100,000 faculty members? It's got to be through social networks, personal relationships that occur over time. Friends have to tell friends to make a change. And then what made this really interesting too is they had to get this done in 6 months. The legislation was approved in the fall, signed off. It was probably, I think it was like end of November. Then we had to say, okay, how are we going to transfer the money? We're going to do all this administrative stuff. And then get the communication out to the campuses. Again, about 140 campuses in California. And you know what that's like, right? Of course, the telephone game comes to mind. And so what do? It's all about building locally, linking globally. How do you find people on a campus who will be your champion, who will be an advocate, and empower them to do the local effort with the academic senate? And the first step we did is what you're doing here. We brought everyone together. We used the online learning consortium, Roll works with them a lot, and we said, come spend a day and find out how to get the money. We covered their registration, we covered various things, we had academic senates there, stuff like that. Bringing people together allows you to build friendships, right? I hope today, with the people sitting around the table, you're going to find out about who else is doing this, because if you can get a friend helping you out, it'll be a lot easier to do those innovative things. And what we covered issues around the legislation, analytics, sustaining, etc., and then talk about the initiatives and stuff along those lines. For yourselves, what we also put together was templates for plans. So these are critical elements that we put. You folks, we have the template. We have a Google Doc, CC BY on it. Go have fun. That can allow campuses to develop their campus plans for how do I do the communication, the training, health support, printing, library, tech services, and who's going to be your go-to person on campus. So these are really critical elements about a plan that when they came to us, they said, well, how do I get the money? Here's the plan. Fill in the blanks. And we were able to get a lot of campuses. These are some of the things that are on there, what they talked about. Now, we had 44 campuses submit proposals in that time. Now, in one semester, we sent out about 1.7 million, and in one semester, we saved 4.4 million. Okay? Now, every semester, you're going to see that number growing, and all the campuses were not able to implement in that first semester. Right? So you can begin to see the snowballing of that impact. Right? And all the campuses didn't send in their reports, so you have a chance to really produce significant funding. And when you say a 1.7 versus 5, let's say we round up in assuming if everyone got all the reports, I mean, a 3-to-1 investment ratio is pretty good. And what I'm going to do next is just, Cable talked around this. There's lots of resources out there. And what I'm going to show you, one is community colleges here, career and technical education, essential, workforce development, bingo. Where's that in the OER world, right? Okay, so here the U.S. Department of Labor, we've talked about the limit already, put in this $2 billion to support community college creation. They wouldn't say of OER, it's workforce curriculum that has an OER requirement, right? And Cable said this was all voluntary, right? But they all went for the money, and then they said, what the heck is Creative Commons, right? And that's when your opportunity to do the training and professional development occurs, right? Because they said, here's a grant requirement. And the Creative Commons organization stepped up big time and did a lot of training early on. We got into this, and workshops, training, building, tutorials, all of a sudden bringing together the chance to transform the way these community colleges were thinking about it was just phenomenal because of the requirement. They went for the money that then gave them an opportunity to learn around the licensing process. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll show you some of the stuff. Now, on the Cool for Ed website, you can find a lot of stuff, but we added the Cool for Ed website on this tab there, Career and Technical Education. We've ordered those materials by SOC codes, which is the standard occupational classification codes. So if you want to find it, click on the button, you go right into the library and find materials in there. There's full online courses, full certificate programs, hybrid courses, syllabi. You got lots of stuff. There's stuff about mentoring. There's tons of stuff there. Okay, that collection isn't full yet, but that's still moving along. And then we also added virtual labs when you're doing sciences type things. And this last aspect is all the funding that we sent out to campuses for that AB 798, that's the one where faculty are learning how to use OER. Anything that they've used or created has to go back into the Cool library. And that is the biggest problem, if the information goes out and doesn't come back in. All right. The last thing I'm going to cover here is the designation of courses, putting 0 textbook courses. And it's no big deal. So this is, if you can see it, in the Channel Islands, one of our community colleges, in their course schedule, you just put a little designation, no cost. Now people say, Jerry, why'd you go with no cost? Well, it's because 0 is easier to get 140 campuses to agree on than what the price is, right? You have to think about this. 5 more minutes, yep. And so this is a stepwise process. Of course, it's going to be more effective if we have a full range. Now, what's changed? Librarians, I say, you are going to own the OER services in an institution. How do you sustain OER? Higher education has to take back the content business. The university press, technology is enabling that to occur. We're pulling books off shelves. Guess what? Our servers are going to be the new resources. We're doing these. I think it's phenomenal. And who knows how to find stuff? Librarians. Who knows how to organize stuff? Librarians. Who knows how to manage revisions? Librarians. Presidents and provosts have to be advocates. It helps create priorities. Faculty become champions, and students become beneficiaries. And even by looking at all the different resources that we put together, how our bookstore creates savings, how our libraries create savings, how the OER in the CSU last year, 36 million we saved our students. But that is only about 10% of what the students actually pay for educational content. Okay, so someone asked the question about how to find all this OER, and I'm just going to show you in just the 2 minutes left. Something here. This is relatively new in MERLOT. We pulled it out last year. Let's say I'm teaching genetics and I'm looking for DNA stuff. Okay. What we've done is also, you got stuff in MERLOT, right? But we've also searched other collections simultaneously. So a lot of the, and we keep on adding, so you get Amazon, Compadre, Flickr, Google Books, MIT OpenCourseWare, OER Commons, OpenStax, Scribe, Skills Commons, Orange Grove, and Whisk Online. All these resources are searched simultaneously. So whoever asked that question, how do you find a one-stop shop for searching? This is on the way. There's lots of improvements. The other thing we've done is we've customized a Google search application for discovery of DNA on the web. Now, if you typed in DNA in Google, what you're going to get are paternity suits, probably falling up to the top, or something along those lines. Not educationally content related. So what we've done is we created a Google search rule that's based on, I'll just say, characteristics of what the educator looks at. And so here's a chance to find other materials. And it produces 100, you're going to get lots of materials. So the issue is not around how do I find it, then it gets to how do I select it. Okay? Was that helpful? Did that answer that person's question? Does that look like it helped out a little bit? If he or she is still there. Okay. And let me just close this. Was that useful to see that? Okay. And let me just get to the final slides here. So we got MERLOT, affordable learning solutions. We got lots of stuff. All the materials here about planning your initiatives, all there for you to take. I'm working with HBCUs. If you look at this website, it looks a lot like Cool for Ed. Guess what it is? We just strip out the logos on Cool. We put Southern University on. We have Central. We have Xavier. We're doing a lot more where you can recreate, in a sense, an open educational service branded on your own, Skills Commons in here. And here's always the question, right? How do we make education more successful and affordable? Anybody ever feel like this? Right? And I think one of our problems in higher education is we talk about collaboration, but when we look at our organizational structure, we're about division. Do you have a division of academic affairs and a division of student services? Even in our own language, we define it. So how do you start bringing people together? And I think when you begin to look at stuff that we've been doing in the CSU, this is all there for you to use, to share, to download, to do what you want, to modify, to do 5 bars on this. We have a lot of stuff with this environment. And because collectively, with our friends, we can do so much more than what any of us can do individually. Okay. So with that, call a date. Am I on time? Oh my goodness. I'm usually called the late Jerry Hanley. Now, I still want to stay alive, but Okay. So thank you so much. And I think now do I have time for questions? You got some questions? Okay.
I apologize if I this is. I was interested in you mentioned academic senate. Is that something specific to the actual government, or who are the individuals who are actually, putting forth these laws that you use? There's a specific school or the actual government.
So in California, we have a shared governance strategy. Every campus has elected representatives of their faculty across our different colleges and departments. And when there are policies that are related to our academic enterprise, the Academic Senate helps develop those policies about how we have to govern ourselves. And it could be around, again, academic freedom, or it could be around, this is around textbook affordability. It could be around general education policy. So the faculty governance process is a really critical aspect in the California. Now, do you have that in Florida? All right. So those are really the voice of the faculty, and how do you turn that from, let's say, an argument into a chorus? This is really essential of how do you get people singing together around a critical aspect and spending time with that. Did that answer your question?
You're saying it's still just senators who actually do voting.
Correct. Yeah, the faculty, they have to put the resolution on the floor of the Academic Senate on their campus and say, yes, we're going to do this, and then they send me that approved Academic Senate resolution, and those are posted up on the Cool for Ed website, and you can check those out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you had a lot of those conversations with the Senates. Did your conversations include promotion and tenure credit, as Dr. Reed brought up this morning?
Let me just say, what I try to do is always just be responsive rather than tell them what they need to do, right? Now, on some campuses, some of this issue around the creation of OER and how do you get credit in an academic environment started a conversation. But the academic senate, the policies around retention and promotion are often departmental policies. So ultimately, those have to go back to departments to determine what that is. Sometimes the academic senates do, they have some policies around RTP at the college level and things like that. But it's getting the conversation started is how do we give credit for the authoring of OER that is not recognized by the publishing community, right? And so one of the things, like for in MERLOT, we have people who you can create what's called bookmark collections, which basically becomes a citation index. How many other people have identified your material that as part of their own personal collection? So we've tried to get them to say, oh, you like citation indexes, why don't you look at the tools that are out there to say how many other people are using those instructional materials? So it's getting the conversation started, because if it doesn't start, you'll never get to the end. So finding a way to get started is important.
Thank you.
Okay, did you learn something useful?